protest and dissent against the budget. Because we dissent, we will be called Andolanjeevi and Parjeevi. Who are the Parjeevis of this country? The Parjeevis of the country are those 1% who control 73% of India's wealth. And this is a budget for that 1% who already control 73% of India's wealth. Mr. Chairman, I'm grateful to you for this opportunity. I'm grateful to the Honorable Finance Minister for being present here when I have an opportunity to speak on the budget. I will be very brief. Let me first recall last year. Dr. Arvind Subramanian, who had just demitted office as Chief Economic Advisor, said pre-COVID, pre-budget, that the economy was in the intensive care unit. Dr. Abhijit Banerjee, the Nobel laureate, said pre-COVID, pre-budget, the economy was doing badly. The country had witnessed 8 quarters of slowdown. The 8th quarter was underway, but we knew that the economy will slow down further. It started at 8% in the beginning of 2018-19, and ultimately it ended with 3.1% or so in 2019-20. In my intervention last year, I had pointed out that the government was in denial. The government was refusing to accept the reality of a slowing economy. And the government believed wrongly that the problem of India's economy was cyclical and not structural. The Honorable Finance Minister and other spokespersons of the government flatly refused to accept our arguments, brushed aside our contentions, and continued to pretend that all was well. And I remember the dates and the occasions when they said the revival will happen next quarter. Be that as it may, 2 years of slowdown is a reality. And then the COVID struck. And we pleaded that while you address the basic issues that are afflicting the economy, please do 2 things. One, transfer money to the poor people. Do a cash transfer. Secondly, use your mountains of food grain to give free rations to poor people. Even this morning, a distinguished economist has said, whatever may be said about the budget of 2021-22, it fails on the fact that even a small amount of cash transfer is not being given to the poor, and the rations are not being continued for the poor. Be that as it may, sir, this government continues to believe that supply-side responses will turn the economy around. I think there are 5 fingers in one hand. I can count who are those supply-side theorists. One is the Honorable Finance Minister herself. The other is the Chief Economic Advisor. The third is the distinguished economist who presides over the Niti Aayog. And the fourth is the Honorable Prime Minister's speechwriter. And I'm still looking for the fifth who wants to be counted on that side. Every economist in the world has said we have to stimulate demand. And the best way to stimulate demand is to put money in the hands of the people. This government has failed on that account. I repeat the charge. You are still not learning the lessons of the last 36 months. And I'm afraid, as a result of your not learning the lessons, another 12 months will be lost while the poor will suffer and suffer greatly. Sir, in 2004-05, in constant prices, the GDP was about 32.42 lakh crore. I'll leave the decimals out. Let's take us 32 lakh crore. In 2013-14, when the UPA demitted office, it was 105 lakh crore. A little more than 3 times. Since then, what has happened? In 2017-18, it was 131 lakh crore. 2018-19, it crept up to 139 lakh crore. In 2019-20, it was a slower crawl to 145 lakh crore. And in 2020-21, the year that is about to end, the first half was about 60 lakh crore, and the year may end with about 130 lakh crore, which means we are back to where we are in 2017-18. 3 years of incompetent economic management, and the Honorable Finance Minister took exception to my using the word incompetent. I can't use a harsher word in Parliament. I'm using the mildest word available to me. 3 years of incompetent economic management will mean that at the end of 2021, we will be exactly where we were in 2017-18. Please remember, sir, in the last year, not entirely because of the government, because of the pandemic too, 120 million people lost their jobs. That's 12 crore. 64.7 million dropped out of the labor force. And out of that, 22% are women. Only 1 out of 11 jobs are held by women, but 4 out of 11 who drop out are women. 28 million are today registered in the employment exchanges actively seeking jobs. 35% of MSMEs are closed. Come to Tirupur. Come to my town. Where was this bakery? Closed. Where is this workshop? Closed. Where is this laundry? Closed. The reality is there is no demand in the bulk of India. I'm talking about a relatively advanced state like Tamil Nadu. Imagine what the situation will be in relatively backward states like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Orissa. My heart pains for them. I'm not happy they are backward, but it will be worse in those states. Sir, the answer to India's economic situation is to take the advice of well-meaning critics, distinguished Indian economists who may be in India, who may be abroad, and address the structural issues facing the economy and immediately address the needs of the poor people. This is what my colleague Mr. Sibal said yesterday. You have ignored the poor, you have ignored the unemployed, you have ignored those who have lost their jobs and still looking for those jobs. You have ignored the MSMEs which are closed down. You have ignored the jobs that were lost in the closed down MSMEs. If you ignore the bulk of India, who is this budget for? Before I answer the question, who is this budget for? let me give you some numbers. Major numbers are suspect in this budget, like last year's budget. Of course, you will always say the numbers unravel because of the pandemic. You won't have the excuse this year. These numbers are going to unravel. And like last year, the finance minister will have to make mini budgets. Let's look at the reality of the numbers. You said you've raised about 10 lakh crore of additional borrowing. Where did this additional borrowing go? On the capital account, you are spending 27,078 crore. Let's add the grants and aid of capital investment, another 23,876 crore. The total additional capital investment in the current year, which will end on 31st March, is 50,954 crore. Let's say 51,000 crore. Where did the rest of the money go? Not for new investment, not for capital investment. Where did it go? Because you have three large holes. On the revenue side, your expenditure increased by 3,80,997 crore. On the revenue side, you had a revenue shortfall of 4,65,773 crore. And on the disinvestment, you had a shortfall of 1,78,000 crore. And that adds up to 10,24,770 crore. So your money that you borrowed is only going to fill the gaps, the huge craters that are there in the economy today. Next year won't be any better. The additional borrowing will go under the same heads. Mark my words today, and we'll come back next year. Mark my words, the revenue projections for next year are ambitious. There will be a shortfall. The disinvestment proceeds projections are ambitious. There will be a shortfall. And your revenue expenditure will increase more than what you have provided for, because you have underprovided under a large number of heads, including defense and health. Next year, total expenditure increases by only 32,931 crore. I've complimented you in writing, and I compliment you here. You are spending on capital account an additional 1,15,000 crore. But what is 1,15,000 crore in a GDP which you estimate will be 222 lakh crore? Your estimate says your GDP next year will increase by 28 lakh crore, but you are spending an additional only 1 lakh crore on capital account. While I've given you half a compliment, I'm going to have to hold back the other half of the compliment, because there's not enough is being spent on capital expenditure. Sir, let me point out another number that will unravel. Your projected nominal GDP growth of about 14.8% or 9%. And then you say, I'll still grow by 11%. The math is bewildering. Inflation next year will be at least 5%, maybe even 6%. If your nominal GDP growth is 14.4%, and if inflation is 5 or 6%, the arithmetic I have says your growth will be only 9.4 or 8.4. This year will end at -10, -11, and next year will grow by 8 or 9. This is what Dr. Geeta Gopinath said is mechanical. Don't claim credit for that growth. If the decline in the previous year is -10, the mechanical rise will be +8 or +9. So don't go about boasting about these numbers. The real test is, when will you come back to a constant GDP which is higher than your highest, namely 145 lakh crore. I'm afraid it will take you 2 to 3 years, which is why Dr. Gopinath said to reach pre-COVID levels, we'll have to wait until 2025. There are three numbers on which I must comment. One is defense. The first time, I think, in the history of Parliament, the word defense was not mentioned in the budget speech. Please correct me if I'm wrong. The word defense was not mentioned in the budget speech. On health, the numbers have unraveled again. Everybody has blown a hole into the numbers claimed by the finance minister that she had increased health expenditure by an astronomical figure. The budget at a glance, the budget division which prepares the budget at a glance, has blown a hole into that by revealing the true figures. And the true figures are clear on page 10 of the budget at a glance. Health, current year revised estimate is 82,445, and next year is only 74,602. We've actually reduced the allocation for budget according to page 10 of the budget at a glance. And the third is petrol and diesel prices will not increase because we have reduced the cess and comparably increased reduced the excise and comparably increased the cesses. There is a proverb in Tamil, Gettikarar Pulugu Ettu Nalekku. A bluff will only have a short life. The bluff was being called 3 days later. Prices of petrol have increased by 36 paise and 26 paise. And believe me, it will rise again. It will rise again. What you have done by imposing a cess is to deny the state government of their share. So many numbers will unravel. I don't want to alarm or disappoint the Honorable Finance Minister, but I'm afraid many numbers will unravel. Finally, sir, I want to point out what is the text of the speech. The text is prosaic, bureaucratic. What is the pretext of the speech? The pretext is we have a pandemic. Let me tell you, we don't hold you responsible for the pandemic afflicting India, nor do we hold you responsible or give you credit for the pandemic leaving India. The coronavirus came to India and the coronavirus is leaving India. You don't take the blame for the coronavirus coming into India, but you don't take the credit for the coronavirus leaving India. But that's a separate debate on a separate occasion. The pretext is we have a pandemic, and the answer is supply side measures. The context is a slowing down economy pushed into a deep recession, minus 10%, thanks to the pandemic and thanks to incompetent economic management. But more than the text, more than the pretext, more than the context, what is important is the subtext. The subtext is this is a budget prepared for the rich, of the rich, and by the rich. This budget has done nothing for the poor of India who continue to suffer. The unemployed, those who are looking for employment, those who have lost jobs, the MSMEs that are closed down, the migrant worker, those who are waiting for rations to be given to them for a few more months. All of them have been neglected in this budget. The subtext is this is a budget for the rich, of the rich, and by the rich. We must therefore record our strongest protest and dissent against the budget. Because we dissent, we will be called Andolanjeevi and Parjeevi. Who are the Parjeevis of this country? The Parjeevis of the country are those 1% who control 73% of India's wealth. And this is a budget for that 1% who already control 73% of India's wealth. We reject this budget in the name of the people. We appeal to you to amend this budget and provide cash transfers, rations, and succor to the poor. As long as the poor continue to suffer, you may get away with this kind of budget. But one day or other, the poor will wake up and in a non-violent, peaceful manner, show the government what it has done and what it should have done. I don't know when that will happen, but it will happen because the poor continue to suffer before your budget and after your budget. And therefore, we reject this budget and record our strongest protest against the budget. Thank you.
अगर आपको हमारे वीडियोस पसंद आए तो प्लीज़ लाइक करें, सब्सक्राइब करें और शेयर करें।